Hello and welcome to the Paddock Pass podcast. On today's podcast, we're looking forward to the Catalan Grand Prix. And I'm very excited to be back on the podcast because it's the first time I've been on with our MotoGP team in quite a while. And it's a good round to be coming back for as well because Adam Wheeler, is this the round where Marc Marquez doesn't do the double?
History would indicate that you're right, Steve, that the sequence could be broken. 14 races now, 7 GPs that Marc's been unbeaten. A notoriously low grip track, but I don't know. I think Marquez is going to sort of bask in home GP glory. I think he's just going to continue the sequence. So I'm not really going to go into any danger of placing my money anywhere else.
But obviously, David Emmett, we've seen Pecco Bagnaia say after Hungary that he feels that he's found a massive solution. So he's still going to do nothing this weekend in Catalonia, you'd imagine.
No, I mean, I genuinely do think that they did find something in Hungary. I think also he gets to use his big 355 discs. That's another one of those little sort of question marks that gets ticked off. There's lots of little factors which are pointing him in the right way. If they have made a really radical change to setup, which I think they have, then, you know, all of a sudden Pecco Bagnaia gets very interesting. He is fast around here. He's won around here. So, yeah, but, you know, a low grip track, it should be Marquez written all over it.
Should be, but you should also be the pessimistic man. So Neil Morrison, this is a massive turn up of events where David's actually being positive about something.
It is, and I'm going to add a further strand of positivity into the mix. In that, I was looking through the past winners here, and I think we've had all five different manufacturers win at this track in the last 6 years. So it has been a fair bit of variation. Although last year, I mean, it was Ducati pretty much at the top. In terms of race wins, except for Alex Espargaro, who won the sprint in the first encounter last year. But yeah, it's definitely a different weekend, and it's one that Marc has been very keen to talk down his chances in. So yeah, perhaps there is an inkling of a chance for the likes of Alex and maybe the Aprilias, who've had a really good record here in recent years.
Yeah, I'm always excited to come to Catalonia because we all get to remember the pitboard fiasco, David. And Aprilia always do have good form here as well. But Jorge Martin, last time out in Hungary, he was really impressive. Finish inside the top 5. Yeah,
I mean, Martin now basically has the pace of the front runners, which is, you know, incredibly impressive. It means he really is back very quickly. He's pretty good around Barcelona. Bezzecchi could be quite good here as well. Yeah, there is definitely reason for optimism. But yeah, you know, like Pecco could be good. Alex Marquez, you've got to think that this is the track that he comes back.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens. 175 points is the difference. And obviously Marc very much in control of the championship. But let's move straight into all the big news that we're getting around the paddock as well. Because the biggest news, Adam, was that Yamaha have confirmed that we're going to see the V4 in action in a week's time in Misano.
I don't know, Steve. The V4 subject's starting to annoy me a little bit now. I mean, I don't. The bike, you know, people keep asking about it relentlessly to the point where Augusto Fernandez must sit down for his media debrief and kind of roll his eyes already. I mean, it feels like a lot, maybe even Yamaha are hinging many hopes on this motorcycle, and it's, according to the last information from Fabio Quartararo, it's clearly not ready. I don't think we should have great expectations that this new era for Yamaha is going to come in and suddenly put them at the front of the MotoGP field. You know, there's a danger of that happening, of course, if you hype up some sort of radical new solution or some sort of recovery method. I just don't think it's. It'll be interesting, of course, and I'm sure Dave will be salivating. But I mean, just give it some time. I mean, I wouldn't really expect much from Yamaha and their new V4M1, you know, for you know, at least maybe another half a season.
Yeah, I mean, that is spot on. We're not going... The Yamaha V4 is going to be slow, or Augusto Fernandez on the Yamaha V4 is going to be slower than Augusto Fernandez would have been on the inline 4. That's pretty clear. The bike well, all I've heard about the bike is that it is still very slow, but then that doesn't really matter because first of all, you want to understand the bike and build the rest of the bits around it. If you're confident that you can actually get the horsepower out of it, and it shouldn't be that difficult to get the additional horsepower out of a V4. So let's see, they're bringing it because, well, first of all, to prepare the Misano test, which is actually very smart because otherwise you spend, the morning faffing about trying to get the bike sorted. Instead, you've got the bike there, you've got the setup, you've got all the data from a weekend of racing. You can stick it into the bike, put Fabio Quartararo on it, and say, "Go out and have fun, lads. Tell us what you think." But the reason they're bringing it is just to persuade Fabio Quartararo, look, we really are doing our best. This is a potential step forward. Please continue to be patient with us because he's not going to be competitive next year on a Yamaha, and their job next year, or he's not going to compete for a championship on a Yamaha next year. But the Yamaha's job is to persuade Fabio Quartararo to give them another chance in 2027.
The one thing I find interesting about it is obviously no one's expecting this weekend, at Misano, that we're going to see that much from Augusto on it. But Neil, it's kind of similar to when Suzuki came in for their GP0, the Valencia round before they made their comeback. And at least you're able to, like David said, get that bit of experience. And you'd expect that maybe one of the rounds later in the year, they'll also come back with Augusto for another round. And it just gives them that little bit of groundwork into the winter testing schedule.
Yeah, it's an interesting comparison, Steve. I hadn't thought about the Suzuki comparison, but yeah, I agree with Dave in that I think it is more just a sort of a display of look how much progress we're making behind the scenes. Maybe we're still going to be miles away, but you just have to look at sort of Yamaha in the last third of the season. I mean, the start of the year was mixed. Then we got back to Europe and there was this sort of big surge of positivity. Fabio Quartararo had that run of 3 amazing pole positions on the bounce, nearly won the British Grand Prix. And it seemed like, wow, Yamaha really could be back. And there were even questions at that time, like they were going to have a bit of a difficult decision on their hands developing this V4 because the Inline 4 still looks like it can be competitive. But the momentum of the Inline 4 project really seems to have just fizzled out in the last couple of rounds. I think Fabio's only had 2 top 6s since that British Grand Prix when things went awry so spectacularly. And just his body language in the last 2-3 months has been quite negative, defeated, you could even say. And I feel that Yamaha in some way senses this and senses that he needs a bit of a G up. And I think that this is maybe one of the strategies behind bringing this forward, because we know the Japanese manufacturers historically have been a little cautious when it comes to introducing new things, and I think this is also not just to say like, look, we've got this cool new project here, but look, we're actually breaking the mold in how we've sort of historically acted, and we're kind of being a bit more risky and a bit more a bit more forward thinking about how we're going to introduce this project. So yeah, it seems like they're playing the optics as well as trying to bring the development forward.
Yeah, they're basically saying, look, we can build a V4 that's just as slow as our inline 4.
Dave's optimism and
cynicism's back. Cynicism is back.
Adam, just when you look at Yamaha in general as well, obviously we're used to seeing it in road racing. It's a massive change for us to see them do something like this where they develop all these different projects parallel to each other. Have they done anything like this off-road as well at any stage, or is this totally against the norm for Yamaha?
No. I mean, Yamaha always operated from a pretty stable sort of YZ 450F or 250F technical platform in motocross, but then they do have different tuning divisions, whether it's Star Racing in the US, YRD in Europe with Michele Rinaldi, or sort of the GYRD group. Is that the right pronunciation for Yamaha Motor
GYRT, I think, yeah.
Yeah, GT, yeah. Of course, Steve, prominent in Superbike. But I mean, I agree. I mean, it was only not so long ago on this podcast we were saying that Yamaha was probably the most interesting manufacturer in MotoGP, just for the diversity of riders they were looking at. I mean, of course, Top Rat coming in is a big bet. It's a gamble. It's certainly a very interesting recruitment. But then, of course, on the technical side, what they're trying to do as well. And the points made by Neil and David are entirely valid. I just hope we kind of see the bikes sooner rather than later. And then, this apparition of like the great sort of blue hope hovering in the background can, actually have some sort of measurements stamped on it.
Or be crushed forever.
Yeah, we know the Japanese like to crush bikes. So there we go.
Adam, you mentioned about the riders as well, and it is quite interesting to see what Yamaha are going to decide to do because, Neil, you've obviously talked a lot to Manu Gonzalez through the course of the season. He's going to stay in Moto2. It would have been exciting to see them take a Moto2 rider. It looks more and more like it's going to be Jack Miller to stay on. Given his V4 experience, it makes sense for another year. But it's not an exciting decision to keep Jack Miller for another year.
Well, I mean, it depends on your nationality, Steve, and your particular persuasion. I mean, Jack has had positive moments this year. I think I was speaking about that sort of lull in Yamaha, and you know, Jack's results have been part of that. But it's not as if he's been massively outperformed by the other Yamaha riders there. You know, it's not like he stood out for his performances. No way. There was arguably enough in his early season to suggest, you know, that he's deserving of another year. And yeah, I think that's what he was saying over the weekend in Hungary, and what Fabio Quartararo was saying on Sunday, actually, after the race, that Fabio has no V4 experience in MotoGP. Alex Rins has half a year with a Honda, and then he injured himself at Mugello. Otherwise, it's all inline 4 experience for him. Toprak has never ridden a MotoGP bike, you know, over a season, so therefore they need to lean on someone that actually knows what a V4, how it reacts and how it behaves. And, you know, Jack, I think an experienced hand alongside a rookie is probably the way to go. I mean, Manu Gonzalez is an exciting talent, but if you don't get Manu Gonzalez, I don't think it's like you're missing Pedro Acosta. Yeah, it's not like you have to put this guy in your stable going forward. You know, I think he's a very talented rider and he could well be champion this year, but yeah, he's not like one of those guys that I think Yamaha bosses will sit up and think, you know, is he the one that got away? I think, you know, you could probably come back in and swoop for him next year for 2027 if, you know, if it plays out as we think it will. So yeah.
Obviously, for us here on the Paddock Pass podcast, as ever, we're supported by Renthal Street. So check out renthal.com and the Fit My Bike tool to see the chains, sprockets, handlebars, mounts, and all the different parts that you're able to fit to your make and model of bike. And just when we look at the rider market, another step forward from it, Adam, we saw the news from Honda this week that Johan Zarco's confirmed for the next 2 years, and Luca Marini's going to stay on as well at HRC.
Yeah, no big surprises there, Steve. We're waiting, of course, Diogo Moreira to be confirmed, you know, as Zarco's teammate, and that could be a multi-year deal. You would expect sort of Diogo's representatives to agree to nothing less as a MotoGP rookie coming in. But it makes sense for Honda. I think Luca Marini's been obviously the more consistent racer in sort of HRC colours this year. And then Zarco did himself the world of good by performing so well at Suzuka. And it sounds like from the press release, he's also committed to doing that 8-hour race for the following years. So Zarco, at the sort of ripe old age of 34, 35, is not going to have an easy schedule for the next 2 seasons. I'm not too sure, you know, being Honda or Lucio Cecchinelli, if you should be concerned by Zarco's sort of recent drop-off in form. I mean, he was pretty sort of fed up in Hungary, telling us that, you know, he's, you know, the HRC official riders in the Castrol colours with John Mir and Luca Marini have been having some more upgrades in terms of parts. They seem to imply that, you know, he was not getting the same sort of treatment when it comes to allocation of components. There was just a little bit of, I don't know, reticence there with regards to sort of how it was all being organised at Honda. I don't think it's a major thing at all, but of course it isn't, because Zarco signed another 2 years with the factory. But it could be indicative of how Honda sort of maybe changed their development policy going forward. It's something to keep an eye on, at least.
I think what may have happened is that Zarco was really hoping to get into the LCR Honda, or sorry, into the factory Honda squad. And, you know, based on his results, hard to say that he doesn't deserve it. But we'd heard also in Austria and in Hungary that Luca Marini was, you know, very confident of staying where he was. So that might just have been sort of, you know, a general sense of sort of annoyance from Zarco at not actually being promoted to the factory squad. I actually quite like Zarco in the factory in the LCR Honda squad, because I think it's much better for there are some riders who really suit satellite teams, and I think that Johann Zarco is one of those. He can really blossom in a factory team, and it's interesting that they've now got some stability in developing their 2027 850cc project. I think Johann Zarco is going to be absolutely key for that.
I think Zarco had accepted that he probably wasn't going to get the factory seat quite a while ago. I interviewed him. We ran an interview with him over the summer, which I did back in Mugello, and he was even talking back then about how he would be more than happy to stay in LCR if it meant that he was given a slightly higher status within HRC, as in if new parts came to him first, kind of thing. And maybe that is one of the reasons why he was slightly... you can always tell when he's really pissed off when he comes to his debrief in sunglasses, and he didn't take his sunglasses off on the Sunday in Hungary at any point, and he was quite manic with his movements, and you thought, yeah, okay, he's
and if
simmering.
he's eating something now,
yeah,
if
exactly,
they're chomping on some food, then it usually means he's fed up and he wants to talk and depart.
Yeah. So he was absolutely simmering on that occasion. But yeah, you do wonder about this recent lull in results. I think the Suzuka 8R was a bit of a distraction. He was talking about feeling a bit burnt out by just the amount of traveling he was doing. At one point, I think he was in Japan for like 40 hours to do a test, and that kind of wedged in between a 22 race season is quite a serious amount of air miles that he's picking up. So I think that has maybe affected him in some way. And then you also have to factor in, like, historically, Zarco is, he's obviously a double world champion in Moto2, but in MotoGP, there's always been a slight bit of inconsistency with him through the season. You think back to those years, Pramac Ducati, where he looked like he could maybe fight for the championship in the first 6, 7 or 8 races. Then he would kind of go a bit flat in the second half of the season. Same in Tech 3, actually. So you wonder whether that is something at play as well. It's just not putting the whole 22 races together. But coming to Barcelona is a really good record in Catalonia. A few podiums with Pramac back in the days. So perhaps this could be a place where he relaunches himself.
Yeah, it's always funny for the Suzuka tests that the amount of times whenever riders leave a race, arrive in Japan, and if they could arrive at like 2:00 at the track, and then it's 2:30, they're out on track. They'll test for the end of that day. They'll do the next day, and then they've left by 6:00. So a lot of the times you could spend probably about 25, 26 hours in Japan and do a day and a half's testing. But easy to see why Zarco could get burned out by that.
2 questions. The first one, Moreira taking that saddle. I mean, it's not exactly coveted in glory, is it? I mean, Taka Nakagami, a solid top 10 rider on his day, but I'm just wondering, for the Brazilian, would it have been better to choose Yamaha? Or, he said he had offers to step up to the MotoGP, with the emphasis being on plural. Is that kind of the right bike to take? I mean, I'm sure you'll have an opinion on that one, Dave. And secondly, Steve, you mentioned sort of the Superbike reference. It's a pretty kind of seismic week for British and Irish motorcycling, with Jonathan Rea announcing his retirement at the end of the year. There will always be kind of Carl Fogarty, what if kind of questions for him in MotoGP, I think, surrounding his career. But if Jake Dixon does jump out of Grand Prix racing, then you do sort of think, well, where does sort of British Grand Prix racing go from here? Because there's really, I mean, we thought it was pretty bad like a year or 2 ago, or when Cal Crutchlow retired even, but now it's looking bleak indeed.
Yeah, I mean, I think for Diogo Moreira, the question is the long-term plan. I mean, he's probably going to be announced with a 1-year deal, which won't be a 1-year deal because we've got this. I mean, as far as we know right now, there's only one rider officially confirmed for 2027, which is Johann Zarco. However, we know that Toprak Razgatlioglu has got a multi-year deal. I believe that Ducati have an option on Fermin Aldeguer for beyond 2026, even though his contract officially ends in 26. So there's lots of those sort of things. So what I think is that perhaps Honda were willing to offer Moreira a more certainty for the future in terms of a longer term deal rather than Yamaha. Yamaha are also much more focused on, like I say, keeping Fabio Quartararo. They have this incredible talent that they know they can win. that's their main focus. And it's not that much of a gamble on Honda. Look at how much progress Honda have made this year already. They've come such a long way. If you look at their sort of points, I can't even remember what the points total was, but they're about 3 or 4 times their points total from last year. They are scoring. It's not a surprise to see a Honda in the top 6 anymore in a dry race. That, I think, is there's lots and lots of potential. I think now is a really good time to be joining Honda.
Yeah, and I think if you're Diego as well, you have to look at it and say, am I a better rider than Joan Mir? Mir might have a world championship, but the last few years would indicate I can do a better job than him. And then you have it where he'll look at it and he'll think in terms of, this is a good opportunity for me to be able to jump in there and see what I'm able to do. But just to go back to what you were saying about the British riders, the biggest challenge for British riders is, where are they coming from? And that's where, when you look into, and Neil's very well placed to talk about what's happening in Moto3, but Scott Ogden's had, 3 seasons, Neil, in Moto3, and he's had 1 top 5 finish. When you look at what Scott's been able to do in a Grand Prix paddock, it's not where you're looking to put him onto a Moto2 bike, put him onto a MotoGP bike. And that's the biggest challenge for British riders, because the pipeline has to come through the European Talent Cup into Junior GP and then into Moto3, and it's giving yourself those chances. And right now Britain's in a bit of a lull because the talent isn't even coming through into Superbike racing. We're getting our Superbike riders from the Moto2 paddock. We're not getting them from BSB anymore. And we saw that when Taz McKenzie or Brad Ray came into the Worlds from BSB, because it's just been too big of a jump for them. And I think when you look at the future for British riders in the Grand Prix paddock, Neil, it's going to be a little bit of time before we really see that next star coming through.
Unless you open it up to British and Irish riders. And then there's maybe one exciting prospect coming through that you can sort of pin your hopes on. I mean, I don't want to get too excited about Casey O'Gorman building him up, but I think he is a real talent. And he scored points in just his second race as a replacement rider in Moto3 in the 658 squad. Lots of rumours about him being a full-time rider in Moto3 next year. So there's definitely reason to be excited there. However, generally, Steve, I do agree with the sentiment you are expressing there, in that, you kind of think back to 2016, 2017, having Scott Redding, Cal Crutchlow, Sam Lowes, Bradley Smith. I mean, it was in many respects a golden age for sort of British MotoGP in the last 40 years. We didn't maybe necessarily realise it at the time or kind of appreciate it, but that does seem a very far way off. And you're sort of looking at where the next hot thing is coming from. Even when you look through Junior GP, you look through the Rookies Cup, and there's no clear names standing out. I mean, Silva Moit has had a couple of good rides in Rebel Rookies Cup, but he's not been a standout name. O'Gorman, though, this year, has taken a big step forward in Junior GP. I think he's finished 3 races on the podium consecutively. And as I said, a couple of impressive standing rides in Moto3 World Championship level. Doesn't look out of place in that class. So, there's one name that's coming through. But yeah, generally speaking, it's a bit of a puzzle, and I think it's a massive blow, really, for, I can understand Jake Dixon moving to World Superbikes, but it's a massive blow, really, for the likes of Dorna to see that happen, because, as you say, Scott Ogden has had a decent year, but it's his 4th year now in Moto3, and he's not been setting the world alight. And there's not really going to be a great deal for British or Irish fans to cheer in terms of riders fighting up at the front of classes and fighting at the front of championships in the next year or two. So yeah, it's a strange one.
Johnny Rea always used to say, go down to your local motocross track and find the fastest kid there, because, that kind of talent and the ability to feel a motorcycle, search for grip and see what it's doing. And the fact that, so many of the top MotoGP riders now have that sort of dirt background, is a salient point. But the fact that there's actually few British riders coming through in motocross and up to the level of MXGP shows that the British international presence in motorcycle racing is just epically bad at the moment. I don't know what the solution is, whether the ACU need to launch some sort of youth initiative, and be a bit more proactive like their French and Spanish counterparts. But it's not looking too good. The only defense of Scott Ogden, I'd say, is that he was in a good enough team of MLAV Racing, but perhaps didn't have the motorcycle to shine in Moto3. I mean, there's only really been one rider who's been able to harness sort of the full possibilities of the Honda in the last 3 seasons to sort of make it stand out. Otherwise, you needed to be on an Austrian bike. So now that he has it, perhaps, he has the rest of this year and perhaps next to really sort of show that he's worth a place in GP racing. But other than that, it's just, you do feel a bit sorry for Dixon that, his only sort of route or to a half decent, that balance between making money and looking towards sort of sporting ambition lies, in Superbike, and especially with a program that has been underwhelming so far in terms of results.
Yeah, the other side of that coin as well is once you get to a certain point in your career, the calendar plays a factor as well. When you've got a family, the calendar plays a factor as well. And that is making Superbikes more and more attractive to a lot of people. And it's been interesting to see the caliber of people that are looking to actually make the move across. Jake's an interesting one because he is a very successful Grand Prix rider. Neil mentioned about the fact he's interested in the Honda project. He's a better Grand Prix rider than Iker Lecuona or Xavi Vierge ever were. He's been able to win races. He's been a consistent front runner, challenging for top 3 in the championship. That's what makes him quite interesting. And Adam, if Johnny's saying, look for the motocross stars, I'm going through the city centre every day. I'm looking for the stunt riders in the middle of Dublin because there's a bunch of kids out here with their hoods up, their sunglasses on, rolling stoppies through traffic lights looking for a chase from the guards. That's the kid I want to put onto a bike. But for some reason, I'm also not able to catch them.
Have you kept your wallet though, Steve?
Oh, I keep the doors locked and the windows up. That's what the air conditioning's for in the summer.
I think, Steve, you did a nice pod with Gordon Ritchie reacting to the news that Johnny was retiring from World Superbikes. I'm not sure if you covered this, but I mean, it is one of those big what-if moments of the past 15, 20 years. Like you were saying, it's similar to Foggy in his career. I mean, that question, even when Fogarty had won 4 World Championships in Superbikes and he retired, that question still sort of hung over him in his retirement years. And, I think a lot of people are probably interested to know, what would Johnny have done had he come across the MotoGP in 2015, had he gone to Lucio Cecchinello's Honda squad? And I mean, it's an interesting question. I'm just curious to know what you think he would have done. Would he have been a Cal Crutchlow type rider? Would he have been a world champion in MotoGP?
With a Bridgestone tyre, Johnny could have done anything, as far as I'm concerned. Whether or not the Michelin tyres would have suited him is a different story. But if Johnny had decided to make the move across in 2012, 13, 14, 15, I think he would have been a real force because he, at that time especially, he had so much natural ability. And I think that those bikes, those tyres would have really suited him. The whole way through the step-by-step, whenever you can make the comparisons between Johnny and Cal, is that Johnny was a little bit better than Cal. Cal had a great Grand Prix career, surprised everyone with how successful his career was. But I think that Johnny, he'll obviously retire as the best Superbike rider we've ever seen. But also, there will be that little bit of a doubt about did he push to get the chance to come to MotoGP enough? And, I think that there were chances for him, but whether there were real chances that he wanted to give up the chance of winning world championships, I think he made the right decision to stay and win his world championships. The only time whenever I thought there was a real opportunity that he was going to move was, I think it was about 2017, and Suzuki came in and there was the chance maybe he was going to go there.
That would have been a good, weren't they?
Yeah. And that would have been a great opportunity for him because he would have been able to bring Parariba, he would have had his crew around him, and then he would have had the right situation. I think it's a real shame that the last couple of years have gone so badly for Johnny, because without that, I think that everyone feels so much better about saying he definitely would have been able to achieve a lot in MotoGP. The Yamaha just hasn't worked for him. I think also he's just at that point where he's at the end of his career, and he got past that point where he was able to still do what he had to do because he's 20 years on a Superbike. But you look at a kid that turned up in BSB as a rookie and put it on pole in his 3rd round. There's not very many riders do that whenever they're 17 or 18 years of age. Jumps into a Superbike and is that competitive. Johnny was a very unique career, and he's going to join us on the pod on Thursday as well. It was interesting actually, Neil, whenever me and Gordo were recording the pod, I'd sent him a text with a link for joining us on the call as well, and I said, no pressure on it, Johnny. If you want to join us, jump on the call. and he actually jumped on the call just after we had finished recording. But he said we'll do it in Magny-Cours instead. So we're going to get the chance to sit down with him, and that'll be one of the questions that I'm sure will come up over the course of his press conference on Thursday and probably into the pod as well.
One interesting exercise, I think, looking back at riders' careers is the decisions they make and at the right time as well. You know, if you have a couple of riders that you prefer from, you know, past or present, just look back at the decisions they've made and the offers that they had. I mean, take a random example, somebody like Loris Baz, you know, how he kind of jumped around different bikes, different teams, different projects. You know, what was sort of going on around him at the time and what leads to those kind of sort of career twists and turns. It's kind of fascinating. I mean, the last one was with Jonathan Rea was the chance to go to Suzuki. I mean, if he had done that, then, you know, Suzuki obviously closed their doors and shut up shop. So, you know, what would have happened to Rea's career then? He probably wouldn't have been known as like the greatest superbike rider ever. So timing and everything, it does make you a bit fatalistic. And it's, you know, the directions that you choose, how it sort of shapes everything. It's a curious exercise.
Yeah, absolutely spot on, Adam. Because the other thing is, if Johnny had gone to MotoGP in, I don't know, 2013, 2014, he wouldn't have been the greatest superbike rider ever. You know, because he wouldn't have won all those championships. He wouldn't have won all those races with Kawasaki.
Yeah, he would have been just like the question mark in the Superbike paddock about Cal.
Exactly, yeah. We're just moving the question mark around.
Yeah, because it's easy to forget when Cal came in as a rookie, he was the fastest rider in World Superbikes at that stage. He had a lot of poles on the Yamaha, looked really strong, and then deserved his chance and took his chance to go to MotoGP. But if you want to take your chance to go to MotoGP as well, we're supported by Pole Position Travel on the Paddock Pass podcast as well, and their Valencia package is now on sale. The final round of the year is always a really big party atmosphere as well. Valencia is a great city, so it's a great event to go to. And Pole Position Travel are also offering a discounted rate for this round to try and support Valencia after the floods last year. So check out polepositiontravel.com for all the details on what they have to offer. But hotel accommodation, travel to the track, and getting access to their Friday party and into the paddock is all included in that. So check that out on polepositiontravel.com. Other than that, we've got the Catalan Grand Prix preview as well. And Neil, it's your home round for yourself and Adam. And what makes this round special for you?
What makes it special? I mean, usually...
The suitcases are staying up in behind you as well. It's probably the one thing that makes it special.
Yeah, Wednesday doesn't involve a trip to the airport. That makes it very, very special. I wake up in my own bed on Monday morning. That makes it incredibly special. But other than that, I would say its very unique sort of grip properties makes it quite special. I mean, it's probably the lowest grip track surface that we have in the entire calendar. So that always makes it quite interesting. We may have mentioned this previously when we were previously previewing this race in the last couple of years, but you know, it is a track where there's just, it's kind of like Jerez. You look back through the history and there's so much weird stuff has happened in Barcelona, so much dramatic stuff as well. I mean, we've had, you know, the classic races of Rossi and Lorenzo in 09, you know, Stoner Pedrosa and Rossi in 07, Rossi and Marquez in 16. You know, we've had some proper bona fide MotoGP classics here. And then we've also had, you know, some of the stranger moments in MotoGP history at this track. You know, you think of Max Biaggi getting black flagged in the 98 title decider with Doohan when he refused to take a ride-through penalty for overtaking under a yellow flag. You think about Espargaro celebrating a lap early in 2022. You think about Fabio Quartararo taking out his chest protector in 2021. You think about Rossi and Biaggi actually smacking each other on the way up to the podium in 2001 at the height.
I don't know what you mean. That was a mosquito, was it not?
Yeah. At the height of their rivalry. And I was even looking back and thinking there was a case in 2011 when Marco Simoncelli had taken out Dani Pedrosa in France. Pedrosa cracked his collarbone and essentially his season was ruined. And I remember doing an interview with Carlo Pernat a couple of years ago, and he told me about how after that race, Simoncelli had got a note in the post which said, "You're going to die at Dani's home race in Barcelona," with a couple of bullets in the letter. And he then had to be escorted around the paddock with bodyguards all weekend, and then went and put it in pole position, which was a really impressive step. So yeah, there's been lots of hashtag narrative around this race in recent years. And add into the fact that we've had a lot of variety in terms of manufacturers winning in the last 6 years. And yeah, I think that probably goes to explain why we like this round.
I really miss not having it as part of the Superbike calendar because it's such a cool track. And I think especially for Superbike racing, it's perfect for us. Whereas for MotoGP now, just like a lot of circuits, it gets more and more difficult to overtake. But when you look back over the years, like Neil said, Adam, there's so many moments to choose from. What's the one that stands out for you that Neil mentioned there?
Well,
or is there a different one?
Unlike Neil, I mean, I'm sure like his bed covers are probably just like, you know, the back cover and the front cover of Motor Course Annual, because, you know, the guy just absorbs MotoGP trivia. I have trouble remembering what happened in the race last week. But
fuck all, Adam.
Yeah. No,
Marquez won.
Yes. Oh, right. Okay, I've forgotten that. Like Neil said, it's a special track. You know, and actually, sort of, I focused on it a little bit for the book I wrote last year because the state of the asphalt itself is a curious beast. It's made from like a very kind of hard stone, locally sourced, and the circuit has a high level occupancy. I think it's something ridiculous in the high 80s per year, which means it's being used year round, not just for racing, but for track days. I mean, I've driven a Lamborghini around there that was bought for me as part of one of those 2-lap treats from my wife.
I was going to say, it's not your Lambo ad. Because,
no, it's not my Lambo. No,
you know, we do need the support from our patrons, patreon.com/Paddock Pass podcast. It's not to go to pay for the fuel for Adam's Lambo, just to be clear.
Yeah, and the garage costs of storing it there. No, I traded that in for a Ferrari ages ago. But yeah, yeah. So that the track, you know, it has this sort of polished sort of aspect to it, and you know, Apollo Spargaro told us recently, I think we may mention this on the pod, that you know the Red Bull KTM team of him and Danny Pedrosa were testing there, and he said the grip is worse than ever, and he said the guys are going to be complaining a lot, which means we're going to get some cheery debriefs from Pecco Bagnaia because he detests the place and the low level of traction. But that also means that, you know, there could potentially be some sort of upsets in terms of the form book. I mean, I don't think so, honestly, radically. But then, you know, how the bikes are able to find grip at all throughout that wonderful layout at Montmeló is going to be sort of one of the stories, I think, certainly on the first day and Friday. I actually contacted Circuit to ask, you know, is there any plans, you know, in the agenda in the upcoming years for resurfacing? And they said that the feedback that they have from people using the course is very good. I mean, the state of the track itself is fine. Michelin and also the FIM are happy enough with it. They said they have a resurfacing plan mid-term, whatever that means. But otherwise, you know, we're not really going to see any sort of big changes at the circuit, the Barcelona Catalunya. We had some inquiries on our Discord about why it's called Montmeló, and that's basically just a little hill where it's actually built, and the small sort of industrial complex where the circuit's located. Incidentally, off-road fans, there's Rocco's Ranch, which is right next door, a really impressive facility that has numerous tracks for sort of dirt track and motocross and 4x4s. If you're in the area, go and have a look at that. But as I was saying, in terms of the track itself and the grip that it offers, I think that's also going to be one of the big characteristics. So whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I guess it depends on which rider and which team and which brand is going to be able to profit most from it.
Another thing we always have to factor in is the first corner, quite possibly the trickiest first corner in the entire calendar. We've seen massive pileups here on the first lap in 98, 06, 22, 23. And, you know, we really got away with one in 23 when Bagnaia had that huge high side coming out of turn 2. So lucky not to be killed, if we're being completely frank, with Brad Binder running over him. And so that's another thing you have to sort of factor into this. It's one of the craziest first corners, and you're kind of it's always one of those moments on the calendar when you're just holding your breath when the MotoGP bikes are barreling into there for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, there are other first corners, for example, Misano and like we saw in Hungary, which are tricky, but, you know, they're approaching it much slower. Whereas, you know, the first corner of Barcelona, the bikes, you know, they're clearly hitting over 200 k's, which is really fast. And when things go pear-shaped, they go very, very quickly. Another thing, I mean, to me, I love the layout of Barcelona. Barcelona is one of the few real MotoGP tracks that we still have, you know, along with Mugello, Brno, places like that. The surface, because it is so used so much, gets polished and it becomes very, very smooth. So much so that you can actually see. Normally, when you see the overhead shots of the track, you'll see sort of dark lines. The riders are actually leaving dark lines as they lay the rubber down. In Barcelona, it's the opposite. They're taking rubber up, so you see a white line where all the bikes are, because there's just no grip to actually put rubber on the track. The reason that the track is seen as being okay is because it's always bumps which are a real problem. A lack of grip just means you go slower. It's bumps which cause real problems and make a track dangerous, because bikes react unpredictably. Whereas if there's no grip, then like I say, the throttle goes both ways, lads. You just go a little bit slower.
One other update I had from the circuit was that the entry to turn 5 has been widened, or so the escape route, but basically that corner's been made a little bit safer in terms of the layout. So that might be something to look at, and the riders will be watching on their track walk. In terms of what also makes the event special, Steve, I guess the proximity to Barcelona is a big thing. It's arguably closer to a major city than, say, Valencia. Jerez, of course, is probably the closest in terms of proximity, but then it's not quite sort of the sprawling metropolis of Barcelona. And Aragon, of course, is perhaps
the middle of nowhere.
It's kind of more renowned for its remoteness, or loved by only one person.
Don't say hiking, Dave. Don't say hiking. You're
I'm going to mute Dave. I'm going to mute him before he starts it.
But one thing is that the Grand Prix has been a bit weak in previous years, has been connections, and we have some people on our Patreon, in our Patreon community who are coming to this race, and the circuit are actually putting almost 30,000 more train kind of seat availability up, and more frequent train services from the center of Barcelona to the nearby town of Montmeló, where you can also jump on a free shuttle bus. There will be more buses running as well from the center of the city. So the circuit are looking at ways to connect even more, to sort of this jewel of the Mediterranean to the Grand Prix. And I think that is also one of its strengths, because not only, as we've said, is it a great racetrack, but then it does have that sort of distance to, a quite wonderful place to live.
Yeah, that's great, Dad. Good information there for anyone looking to go to the round. And I love going to this round because it's one where you can take people that don't like racing, and you're able to have a few days at the beach, a few days in the city, and then come to the track on the Saturday or the Sunday. So that's what makes it pretty great. But this weekend could be pretty interesting as well, Neil, because we kicked off the show by saying, is this the weekend where Mark can finally be beaten again? There is actually a question mark about him this weekend, which is quite interesting, coming into at least free practice 1 whenever he'll completely assert himself, I'm sure.
Yeah, which he is pretty much placed. He's hung over himself that question mark, saying that this is the one place that is bad. And he always goes on about this being a really weak circuit, but you look at his record and he's racked up more podiums than you can count. Okay, he's maybe not won loads of races here, but he's always been in the mix. And as I've said previously, he did push Pecco Bagnaia pretty darn close on the GP23 in the final race last year, when Pecco was on the GP24. However, I do think there's real optimism for the likes of Alex Marquez. He's obviously been in a bit of a rut, hasn't had a great couple of months since that crash in Assen. He's been off the boil ever so slightly. Austria, Hungary are track layouts that really don't suit him, and this most certainly is a track layout that suits his kind of his riding style. And you just have to look back at the first preseason test that we had in November, and Alex was like nearly 0.4 of a second faster than everyone else. And it was the first moment where I think after the first run, he said, I felt I could do something quite interesting in 2025 with this bike. So that's cool. And then, I previously mentioned Aprilia. I think they've been in a fantastic kind of run of form recently. Bezecchi and Martin both looking so impressive in Hungary. And yeah, just 2 years ago, they finished 1-2 with Aleix and Maverick. And yeah, I'm really interested to see whether they can repeat that. Jorge Martin was very keen to say that he doesn't think a podium is possible this weekend or in Misano. That's too early. But looking at Jorge's record here, he's been on the podium. He's been either second or third in each of the last 4 races in Montmeló. So I'm maybe going to say that he could be a podium contender here.
I hope he has a better celebration.
I'm quite curious if Neil's going to be willing to risk him in our Alpine Stars MotoGP Fantasy League. So we'll keep an eye on that as well. But
that's a good shout, actually. I'm starting to think about that. That's a good shout.
Yeah, I wonder why you mentioned it, Steve. I wonder why you brought it up.
From Morrison. It's a double bluff. I tell you what, me and Neil have been trying to just second guess each other for the last couple of rounds, and we've basically constantly matched each other by making our changes, other than on one of our silver riders. So it's good and close in that league, and we're down into that final third of the season where Neil still has one boost left for Mark. So I'm quite worried about when he's going to decide to use that. But David, just
you've got to learn from the Japanese, Steve. You can't imitate. You have to sort of, you have to deviate from the norm.
I'm trying to. We both dropped Alex Marquez at the last round. We've both sworn off Pecco Bagnaia, so we're trying to figure it all out. But David, it's actually one question I wanted to ask you about Pecco, because it kind of links into our interview that we're going to close the show off with. Adam sat down with Davide Brivio, and Brivio is obviously known as a really good team builder. Pecco was seeing the other side of team building because Mark is just amazing at making everyone want to be working with him. And one of the things that I found interesting was we were all chatting away to someone from Honda recently, and they were saying that when Mark was at Honda, it was almost as if mechanics were fighting with each other to be able to put a screw into his bike.
Yep.
They all want to work for him. And Ducati has always been a manufacturer that if you're winning, you're the man. If you're not winning, you're dead to them. And Pecco's finding both sides of this coin now, where Ducati have moved on from him, and Mark just has it where everyone's gravitating towards him.
Yeah, that is an excellent point, because I really think that one of the strongest characteristics of Marc Marquez's personality is his ability to build a team, because his team will, they would literally set themselves on fire for him if they thought it would help him win. He's great at creating an atmosphere. He's great at inspiring people. Also, I mean, like he didn't have a motorhome until after the 2015 season. He was sleeping in the little GP rooms, which are absolutely tiny. He only got a motorhome after 2015 because he spent all of his. There was no point. He spent all of his time in the garage. Like he was always with his team. I remember one evening at Brno at the test, they were all eating. Him and his team were all eating in the restaurant in the paddock there, and he was just surrounded by them. And it was quite clearly that everyone was looking at him. He was at the center of the attention, not because he was the big star, but because he was the leader of the group. And that, I think, is the most important thing. Pecco is much more reserved, much quieter, much more of an introvert. He is very, very good to work with. He doesn't throw sort of tantrums or anything like that. So he's a completely different personality. He's not as good at binding people to him in the way that Mark is. So, yeah, that's a really, really interesting dynamic that's going on inside of the garage. But, yeah, like I say, I think there have been enough changes for Bagnaia to the bike, to the way that the front, it looks like they've taken some weight off the front so that the front is not locking quite so much, so that he can manage that braking on corner entry that he was missing. And if they can bring some of that back, it's going to be helped by having the big discs. Then it really becomes different. And then, if he starts to challenge Mark, then we get a much more interesting dynamic in the Ducati garage as well.
Because those discs made such a difference in Austria, Dave.
They didn't have the problem with Austria. They had the problem with they didn't make the change in Austria. It helped a little bit in Austria, but didn't make the difference. The change that they made in the radical setup change that they made in Hungary, I think, is going to be the difference.
Obviously, enough for us on the Paddock Pass podcast. Big thank you to Renthal Street and Pole Position Travel for supporting the pod. And check out patreon.com/Paddock Pass podcast if you'd like to support us as well. For that, you're able to sign up as a Paddock Insider, and you'll get our Paddock Note shows throughout the course of a Grand Prix weekend. So usually around about a 20-minute roundup of all the actions throughout the weekend. And for our Superbike show as well this week, we'll have Jonathan Rea joining myself, Gordo, and Evo to preview the Magny Core round. And Adam, just to play us out, you were able to grab a few minutes with Davide Brivio before one of the recent rounds.
Yeah, we targeted Davide at the Red Bull Ring, Steve, because it was actually a year pretty much to the day, well, not the day, to the race where he kind of sat in front of us and justified why one of the most image conscious teams on the MotoGP grid had chosen a very sort of discreet, introverted Japanese rider, even though one that would go on to be Moto2 world champion, as their sort of principal signing for 2025. We couldn't quite understand it amidst the furore around Joe Roberts and the chance to have an American on the grid. And so a year on, and I think Brivio's been vindicated, because Iagura, it hasn't been an amazing debut season, but it's been impressive, quietly impressive in a couple of ways. So we asked him about a little bit about Raul Fernandez as well, because you think that Fernandez is one of those riders that's coming up to a bit of a crossroads in his career too. When we were talking earlier about sort of World Superbike opportunities and what riders do. But importantly, there was also a line of questioning surrounding the future of independent teams in MotoGP. The heavy rumours around Gunther Steiner, the personality from Drive to Survive, buying the Tectoire MotoGP team, means that now people like Lucio Cecchinello, Hervé Poncharal, Grassini, the people that are kind of the proprietors of these setups suddenly could be sitting on something of a golden egg, because the way Liberty could change MotoGP in the coming years. MotoGP teams stand to be more of a franchise than they were ever before. The Formula One effect, I guess you could call it. And we spoke briefly on the podcast, I think, in recent weeks about how the power dynamic between IRTA, the teams, Dorna, Liberty, could be shifting a little bit. There could be more power in terms of what the teams have and how they interact and how they co-promote the sport. So, I asked Brivio about that. And I think also we talk about the riders changing saddles, but keep an eye out for what the teams do in the next 18 months, because that's also going to be really interesting to understand the fabric of MotoGP as we go into the next 5 years.
Yeah, really will. So let's hear from Davide, and check out all of our social platforms, YouTube as well. Neil's making a big effort to make sure that we've got more of a presence on that. So check out our YouTube channel, and we'll be back over the course of the weekend with our Paddock Note shows.
Davide, thank you for joining us on the podcast. It's a pleasure to talk to you in this brand new truck setup. It's taken a while, but it's quite impressive. I mean, how getting logistics like this organized? I guess it takes quite some time.
Thanks to you for to invite me, to have me here. And this is the first race we're using the new truck. It's a double deck, and I think we think that is more suitable for a MotoGP team. And we had basically 2 base trucks before. We didn't have a space for meeting room. We didn't have space for maybe more engineers. And so potentially this is a truck that would allow the team hopefully to grow up more.
I remember speaking with you, and it was a little bit of a rush to get the hospitality in place when you first came into the team. So it's nice that you're able to make progression.
Yeah, when we started, because we have to remember that Trackhouse suddenly jumped into the MotoGP, was November, December 2024. I started work for Trackhouse on February 24, and they were the last things to get organized. In the winter already was made a great job. And hospitality was one of the problems. It was 1 month to go for the first race, and we didn't have hospitality. We put everything together, so it was great achievement. And now we trying the new tracks. We're trying to improve overall. Trackhouse is here to stay. Is here to establish as an organization inside the MotoGP. Of course, there are many teams, also many independent teams with a long experience. Many years in a MotoGP. We just arrive as a team. We try to establish ourselves, to get organized as much as possible in a professional way, and hopefully to grow up step by step, year by year.
First of all, talking about Trackhouse, Davide, they've had some good success in NASCAR recently. Have you been able to feel some of that on the MotoGP side, even just maybe commercial interest or just motivation within the company itself?
Mainly pressure on the MotoGP side, because
so that's negative way then.
Yeah, because we won as a NASCAR team, we won 5 races this year. Actually, we won all the road course races with SVG, so it was fantastic. And of course, this is putting pressure on us. And but okay, it's great to see Trackhouse so successful, and it's also great. It's a great motivation for us. Trackhouse has started in 2021. We've only won one car, one charter, as they called, and then grow up to from this year 25. We have 3 cars in a team, young drivers program. So it's growing up. This is something. It would be a great pathway as a MotoGP team to do the same, and we are getting a full support from Trackhouse, and yeah, we learn from each other, because also there are when the NASCAR guy come to see MotoGP, they get some idea here and there, and at the same time, when we talk each other, we also can pick up ideas. So yeah, we learning a little bit from each other. Of course, it's 2 different worlds. Also, from territorial point of view, one is only in USA. We're going all around the world. They are 4 wheels, we are 2 wheels, but it's a motorsport, it's a racing, and but now in Trackhouse there is a strong motivation, and we see a great future. With both of the activities, and so yeah, let's try to work on that.
As we kind of mentioned a moment ago, it seemed a bit of a rush when you first came in, but now it's like 18 months into the role. I mean, your vast experience with, at least 2 Japanese factories. How do you see the last 18 months for you? Has it gone how you expected, or did maybe you expect more speed in terms of the team development? What's your evaluation?
Yeah, in terms of a team, I have to say that I found a good team, a good organization, and mostly it's all remained pretty stable from last year to this year. We changed a few people. Actually, mainly somebody left the team. We had to replace, but very few adjustments. So I would say the idea is to keep stability going forward. No? Also next year, they are good people. We're happy about everybody, so there's no reason to make a big change. Of course, is first time for me in an independent team. It's different because working in a factory, you can try to influence more, let's say, factory strategies in terms of riders, or maybe push more on the development. Or
isn't there more politics though?
No, I wouldn't say so. Maybe because there were no Italian factories.
Okay. Yeah.
No, I mean, yeah, of course, the decision process is longer because that's more people involved in a factory. The management is, let's say, larger. There are different layers of management. In an independent team is quite straightforward. I talk to Justin, and sometimes we decide by WhatsApp what to do. So from this point of view, yes, it's much easier. But as an independent team, you basically depend on a factory, in terms of development, parts development, when the development arrive, if you are updated or not compared to the factory riders. And historically in a MotoGP, this is something that hopefully it could change for the future. Of course, I'm talking now from independent side. In a MotoGP is something a little bit unusual in the motorsport, I think, because we have a clear division between the factory team and the independent team. It's much better now than in the past because we all get in factory machine pretty much. So from technical point of view is the same. But still, the factory team, of course, they can afford top riders, top salary riders, let's say.
Yeah, the resources are different.
Yeah, resources are different. And also, then depend from factory to factory, but there's no doubt that the factory team has better technical equipment before everybody else. This is quite normal. In general, in other motorsport, if you talk about even Formula One, by even, I don't know, the NASCAR or the IndyCar or whatever. Everybody's pretty much at the same level. Of course, you have a strong team and weaker teams, but let's say you can try to become a strong team. As an independent team, it's difficult to beat the factory. Yes, you have cases. You're going to talk about Pramac last year. Yes, but at the end of the day, let's be honest. I mean, Martin was a rider contracted by Ducati. Probably the independent team couldn't afford to get Martin alone. I don't know, but that's just my idea.
It's a fair question.
The technical equipment, I mean, Ducati was very correct, and chapeau for what they done. I mean, Jorge Martin has exactly the same equipment as the factory team, which is not always the case. I think Pramac was more a factory team in many ways rather than an independent team from a technical point of view.
Almost like they are now. I mean...
Yeah, I mean, the rider were Ducati riders. Engineer were Ducati engineers. Equipment was same as factory team. So was probably just separate garage, no? So, but normally, I mean, this... Congratulations, first of all, to Pramac, and congratulations to Ducati for keep it correct and fair until the end. But in general, it's something not so common, no. And so, in the other sport, you can try to become stronger. You can invest more, and maybe try to reach up the level. Theoretically, you also here, but still, I think there are differences between factory team and independent team, no? Which I hope maybe in a few years it will be more maybe balanced or more, with less differences.
Well, as we're talking about that now, Davide, I mean, I know if I ask you about Aprilia, I know you're going to say that it's a good relationship. I mean, I assume you're happy with the relationship. But as an independent team, do you still feel you have autonomy or independence to be able to look around the paddock and consider other options? Or do you have to be, well, we're an Aprilia team, you know, we need to stay in that line?
But you mean in terms of riders, looking around the paddock for riders, staff, engineer? Or
or even changing the motorcycles in the garage.
Okay. Yeah, no, of course, as you say, we happy with Aprilia, we have a great relationship. I mean, on a paper, theoretically, our contract expires at the end of 26. So honestly, we didn't start to talk yet with Aprilia, but I don't know if Aprilia is happy about Trackhouse and wants to continue. Or, I mean, we have to sit down and talk. I mean,
But do you feel you have the liberty still or the power as an independent team to be able to talk with anybody in the paddock?
Yes. I mean, in theory, yes, we are an independent team. Let's say nothing can stop us from choosing another manufacturer if we really want, because we don't have, I mean, legally we are binded until the end of 26, but still there is a little bit a difficult situation now because still we don't have a contract with Dorna yet for 27. So we don't have a contract then with a manufacturer for 27 and we don't have a contract. So
does it feel late for this time of day or is it quite normal?
No, maybe now it's time to start to consider. No, with Dorna, as a team, we started to talk about, and of course, we don't expect big surprise because I mean I think the common sense and anyway the strategies to keep stability. So I don't see why the existing team are not going to continue on 27. Everybody of us, you know.
Could you see the terms maybe being different because there's a different owner? I mean, MotoGP behind...
Now it's interesting to see what Liberty Media thinks about. I mean, it's still Dorna, no? We're talking about Dorna company, just the shareholder is different, has changed. But I think he has a voice, I guess. And it's interesting to see whether, until now, we always went through a 5 years contract, every 5 years with Dorna. I don't know, we didn't start to talk in details about this. We don't know, maybe if Liberty Media has different idea. It will be nice if the team can, let's say, gain more value, maybe with longer terms, because then we can have stability and we can have assurance. No, let's say if you have a longer contract.
So 5 years, you'd like to see potentially longer.
Yeah, I think we never discuss really in detail with Dorna. Maybe Liberty Media is more in favor of this or not. Let's see. But let's say if we have a longer contract, 10 years contract or whatever, I don't know, then maybe as a team, everybody can make investment, can think a longer plan. It will give a value to the team. Now the interest in the MotoGP is increasing. I mean, we get in a few inquiries, people that interested to become maybe partner in the team or to acquire the team. I mean, as you know. So
it seems Tech3 especially have been a lot in the media for this. I mean, have you experienced any of that yourself, you and Justin? Any people picking up the phone or sending an email?
I mean, to be honest, I think all independent team got some inquiry because people maybe just to know, what if we become a partner of the team, whatever. I think everybody of us, I can name all the independent team and I'm sure they got maybe a call or an interest about this.
That's a positive thing, right?
Yeah, it's positive. I think since Liberty Media has been announced, that they would become, let's say, a shareholder of the Dorna, the interest has increased a lot. And probably now is also based on potential expectation. I mean, if we have seen what's happening in Formula One, the value of the team compared to what they were 5 years ago has more than double, probably for most of them. And so there is a lot of expectation in this sense. But still, about Liberty Media, I mean, it's 1 year we're talking about Liberty Media, but we know very little so far. We didn't see them yet. We don't know what they think. We don't know what we understood is that initially they will probably work more in terms of marketing, increasing the audience, and not touching, let's say, sport and technical.
It's more the presentation side, perhaps.
Yeah, more, how we present ourselves, the marketing, the audience, maybe increase the audience in terms of number, in terms of territories around the world. I think looks like this is the main focus at the beginning because the sport is working well. We are exciting races. So technically, from technical point of view, the 2027 regulation has been decided, so that I don't see any change now. It's too late, I think. So the future sport and technical is more or less defined, and I don't think it's the first priority of Liberty Media. But we don't know. We didn't talk to them yet.
Davide, thank you ever so much for your time. Best of luck this weekend.
Thank you very much.